Hey, welcome to the podcast. Today we had Amy Lesniak on. She's a realtor with the Legacy Group in Plover. Today we talked about quite a bit, just kind of learning about the real estate market, what works in real estate in terms of marketing, housing bubble, just general things like that about real estate. And we got into some really interesting topics about life in general, kind of what puts into perspective brain tumors, having a hard childhood, things such as that. So that's what you can look forward to. And with that, let's get right in. Amy, how does like a real estate agent, like how do you market just in general? Like, let's say I'm
How do
completely
you
new.
market in general,
Hmm.
including me?
Yeah.
So I think everybody is different. I think that my business, I primarily focus on my sphere of influence and my top 50. So people in my life that already know, like, and trust me. I market to them exclusively through mail, through social media, through personal events, through I really kind of butter them up throughout the year. I have different things that I mail and gift and do with them. And then social media, right? A lot of people use social media to market. Um, I think some of those more old school ways like billboard and radio, I'm not sure that those get as much traction, but we do them for fun every now and again. But for me, it really is just the people in my life already that I market to.
So, okay. So from what I gather, your Facebook is relatively like personable, correct?
It is. I try to obviously keep my Facebook professional in the sense that I'm not posting like political content, or it's not that I'm a huge like go out and party girl, but like none of that stuff is on there, but it is very personable. I feel like if you go on my Facebook or my Instagram, you are getting a good grip of who I am in addition to what I do professionally.
Okay. So, that seems to be the case with it's you're a partner on the brokerage, correct? For
I
Legacy
am.
Group?
Mhm.
Okay. So
Yep.
that seems to be kind of like the Legacy Group brand. Is it the same for everyone in there that they try to keep that very personable brand?
I think so. We have a couple of agents that work under us, and for sure, like I think the one realtor, she's all about kind of getting to know her, and then the bonus is that she does real estate, right? So I do think that is part of our brand. I don't know that as many um, offices focus on that as much as we
Okay.
do.
Because I know it's a small group. There's, I want to say, three partners and then five total because Trenton left.
Yeah, so actually, there's only two partners.
Oh,
We
okay.
did have three originally, and then for her being doing the behind the scenes business stuff just wasn't what she enjoyed. So it's just myself and Liz that are partners, and then we've got one, two, three agents up until a couple days ago. Now we just added three more, so we're going to be up to six underneath us. I
Nice
know, it's
job. Nice
exciting.
job.
Yeah, yeah.
I know, because Trenton, was he a full agent under you? Or no?
He was. So,
Okay.
yep. So Trenton, he kind of came along in the transition. He was like collateral damage, right? Like he was a good sport and came along when we were kind of getting our feet planted.
Mhm.
But he does do college full time. He's got, I think, only half a year of college left. And his passion really is more in the financial and kind of the accounting background of real estate. And so he took an internship this summer as a financial planner. And so I actually just met with him last week and he's really enjoying that. So I think after that internship is over, he'll probably stay more in that field. And in the state of Wisconsin, you can't hold both licenses, so you have to pick one.
Wait, really? I
Apparently,
had
it's a
no
huge
idea.
conflict. I
That's
didn't
so
either. None of
dumb.
us did because it is dumb. Apparently, it's a huge conflict of interest, which I guess I can sort of see if you're like coaching people unethically to invest in real estate, maybe. I don't know. But yeah, he can't carry both licenses, which is unfortunate. He can still carry his license to like refer his clients out to different realtors, but he can't practice real estate.
That's annoying. Because like I feel
It
like
is super annoying.
if you have both licenses, for you it's really good because you can do
Mm-hmm.
both for yourself. But then you like
Yep.
if you just say no competition, like I can't serve this person in both, I can only serve them
Yep.
in one. You solve the
Yep.
problem, so you don't have to
Yep.
relinquish your life. That's a headache. That's a royal
It is.
headache.
It is. And he was fantastic. Like I loved his energy. I think just with him being younger and fresh and so yeah, but I think that the financial planning is going to be really good for him too. So
I saw him on LinkedIn. I shot him a connection request because I knew he was working with
good
you
for
guys
you.
and he went to UWSP. So we're meeting for coffee next
Yeah.
week. So
Good for you. And that's good because he needs practice trying to get people to work with him. So that's a two birds with one stone kind of thing. That's awesome.
yeah, I can't wait. He seems like a really interesting guy.
Yeah, I like him a ton. Hmm.
So I wanted to like kind of hammer in the real estate marketing thing
Yeah,
just because real estate in general is so much about getting your name out and then building relationships. And with you
yeah,
guys
for sure.
building a very personable brand and authenticity is kind of like I'm saying authenticity is the new meta is kind of what I coined it as. But it's
Yeah, I
definitely
like that.
coming back just because people care. And I that seems to
Yeah,
be what's working really well for you guys.
yeah.
Like, what would you say is your biggest ROI like thing on that list that you do for
Um,
marketing?
so I think that I don't want to say that I'm unique, but I think having the 20 years, well, 23 years in the salon, um, I think I come at it from a different lens than maybe somebody who's really green. Because I mean, I had this whole book of business. I had 200 clients that trusted me and I saw every 4 to 6 weeks for 20 years, right? And so the biggest change I think for me that was kind of a big revelation is when you're somebody's hairdresser, they trust you more than their mom. They trust you more than their best friend. Like you know things about them that everybody else doesn't know. And with real estate, it's really hard to get people to trust you. I think realtors are actually less trusted than like used car salesmen. So I think that that really helped me because my first year I was able to get together. Gosh, I don't know. I think I had 13 deals my first year, and I only did real estate for 6 months that year. And they were all people that I had from the salon. So I didn't have to
Mm.
try to put that foundation of rapport and relationships. I already had them. Um, and I think with Liz, my business partner, for her, it's kind of the same. I mean, I think when she was a new agent, she also utilized services like Zillow and different kind of generic lead gen systems. But I do think for her, just building the relationships with people is the most important. I think for me too, like because I had the salon and I was so used to really building friendships with people, like when I work with somebody with real estate, I don't want to let them go. I want to keep them close and I want to communicate with them still. And some people don't want that, but I think the majority of my business does.
Yeah. I definitely think it's like when I first met you at Mission Coffee, I thought it was so funny that you weren't blatantly trying to sell real estate.
No,
You were just kind of like, I mean, if you need a house, you need a house. Like, come talk to me. I'll help you out. Whereas every other real estate agent is like, I need houses to sell. And you
yeah.
just like, you
Yeah, and I'm just
exist.
not salesy. I have a
Mhm.
hard time with that. It feels very inauthentic to me. I actually worked with a coach last year, and I said I just have such a hard time. It's so salesy, and he's like, "Well, I mean, you're satisfying a need, right? These people have a need. They're going to buy real estate. Like, you need to look at it not as a sales tactic." And I'm like, I just can't do it. I'm just not salesy. I hope they pick me, but there's also enough business to go around, and I don't know. I think that makes people a little more comfortable with me. Maybe I hope so. I don't know.
It also means that you get reoccurring clients, right?
Yeah,
Because like people, if you get bad taste in the water with a real estate agent, but they were authentic, they were like, hey, I tried to help. Like I'm gonna improve, I'm
yeah,
gonna do better next time. They still might come to you.
yeah.
So even if you
Yeah.
mess it up, you have a better chance of getting more customers or
Yeah,
clients.
and I think one of the things that I do that's really uncomfortable, but I think part of this comes with age and just working with people my whole life is like you don't get every deal, right? Like you do have clients that you've shown 20 houses to, and at the end of the day, they pick a different realtor to work with as a buyer's agent. Or you go to interview to get a listing and they don't pick you, they pick a different realtor. Um, I just follow up with those people and I'll say, hey, like, thank you for the opportunity to meet with you. You know, good luck with your listing. Just if you could give me some feedback as to why you didn't pick me. Um, and it's uncomfortable and you put yourself out there and it doesn't feel good, but it's a really good way to learn what you could do different. So I do that with almost everybody that I don't win.
Okay.
So yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I actually have another kind of interesting question on this.
Yeah.
Like, how do how would you make money on that? Because we're gonna cycle this back, but
Yep.
for real estate agents, it's really important that you need to sell something to make money. How do you make it
Correct.
work with not necessarily trying to sell and you still need to make money? Because there's that kind of like that tension there.
For sure. Um, how do I do that without actually having it make money? I try to remember that real estate, even if you're coming at it from a really personal approach, is still a business of numbers. So the more people that I have connections with, um, the more just conversations, the more touch points I have, eventually those things transition to business. Um, and hopefully I get to do those touches and those connections from a place that feels good and authentic to me, right? So does reaching out to the clients that I didn't have that final connection with actually turn to a return on investment? I don't know that it does, except that it allows me to look at things that I can do better the next time. Um, but yeah, that is I struggle with that a ton, Andrew. Like I chatted with a really good connection this past winter about that because at the end of the day, if I don't close a sale, I don't make money. Um, but I do have this like huge moral, ethical kind of conflict about like how do I do that and not feel like a car salesman. So
I'm actually going to make an interesting point because this is something that I struggle with too. What I found works the best is connect with people, follow up, but if you don't think you're going to get business out of it, follow up less. So
yes,
don't
that's
completely
true.
cut them off, right?
Yes.
Because you can still talk to them, right? You can still be friendly, but then you don't
Yes.
have to have that business kind of networking thing.
Yes.
And then don't try to set
Yes.
up a meeting. So
Yes.
I always set up a first meeting. I'm like, hey, let's get together. Let's connect for a half hour over coffee. So now you get to
Yep.
know the person. If you think that down the line they'd be a good like referral partner, someone who you think you
Yep.
can sell, like every quarter, try to meet with them, connect, whatever. But then you run into
Yep.
the issue of, well, if they don't, you're wasting your times in terms of business, and you think of that as more of a leisure thing.
Sure.
So
Yep.
it's really really hard, and I struggle with that too. Like, where do I draw the line of like?
Yeah, where you're putting the effort out for no return. I think too, one of the things that I like to, and this goes off of your point, is um, actually like your amount of conversion probably is more successful than mine. Like most people in their life only buy or sell like three houses, right? So for me, I need to have this big database, this big book of people who are fans of me so that when people in their life do buy or sell, they think of me. Um, if I bet if you look through my contact list, I've only actually had sales with 10% of the people in my database, but it's the other 300 people that are out there kind of doing the groundwork for me so that when people are looking, my name is the first one that comes up.
Interesting. If you don't mind me
Mhm.
asking, how many do you sell on average, like each year?
Right. So I typically land between 30 and 40 sales a year. Um, Last year I was really down. I think I only closed 22 deals last year, which that was the worst year of real estate I've ever had in the 7 years that I've been doing real estate. Um, and it was hard. It was like a really humbling thing. It's like, gosh, what am I doing? And I think at the end of the day, I had a lot going on in my personal life. I was getting out of my salon. I just had a lot happening. So I wasn't able to take the time to make sure that I was in front of people as much. But even so, that many closings is nothing to be sad about. I think the average real estate agent sells less than 6 properties a year. Last year, 45% of
Oh, oh, I
who
lost.
I had. Oh, it's because somebody called. Are you still there?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sorry,
Okay,
I just
yeah.
lost like the last 5 seconds of audio.
Oh, I was gonna say even just knowing that like I'm still in the top 10% at 22 and not being happy with that. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay. So I looked up the medians. So according to NAR, I don't even know what that is. The
it's the
average
National
realtor.
Association of Realtors. Yep,
Cool.
yep,
I'm not gonna remember that.
that's okay.
The average realtor does 12.
Okay, okay,
And then when they spelt it out, but specifically for 2023, it was 10. So
okay.
2023 was down.
Yeah, it was as a whole, as an industry. Yeah.
I
Hmm.
did also want to ask kind of real estate. So people are talking about like a housing bubble. And I
Yeah.
just talk to me about like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So, I mean, 2008, I think a lot of people have a huge amount of like PTSD from that. So, what happened back then is there was a lot of unethical lending and people were getting loans and second mortgages and home equity lines on properties for much more than what that property was worth. And so then what happened is when those mortgages started to default, right? People had to sell and there wasn't the value in their property. So somebody would owe $500,000 on their house and it was worth $300,000 and it was a huge mess. And so I think that's kind of the foundation um, of where that fear comes from. I think what we've seen in the last 4 years is just unprecedented appreciation. The typical appreciation in real estate is like 3 to 4% a year. So just holding your property, that's how much you're making. Um, the last 4 years, it's all been double digits. There was one year it was 19%, right? So I think when we start seeing that kind of appreciation, people get scared. And I think it's just from that happening back then. The biggest difference is we don't have any inventory. Um, we just don't have any inventory. So until that changes, I don't know how we can have like a burst of the bubble because there's still more demand than there is property.
Yeah, I definitely like. So I'm looking into investing in real estate after my lease is done this year. So I've
Yeah,
got another 8 months or so. But like,
yeah,
I'm just keeping an eye on the MLS,
yeah.
and there's nothing.
There
Like
isn't.
it is barren.
Yeah, it is. And different price points are considerably worse.
Mhm.
If your first time home buyer range, let's say, is up to 200,000. If I go on the MLS today and look, there's not anything for sale. Like you don't even have
Mhm.
one choice under 200,000 right now. Um, so what that does is just drives up price.
Yeah, I know. One of the other issues with the business as well is I have to show X amount so that I
Yeah,
can even get a loan.
yeah,
So, like this year, I'm going to try and show around $50,000.
okay,
Well, but then I have to pay taxes on it, and then
yep,
I have to figure out, well, how much can I do? And I'm a first
yep,
time home buyer, so I can FHA or REIT loan it.
yep,
So I'm going to have lower interest rates,
yep.
and and if I REIT it, I don't have to pay. Well, I still have to pay the I'm
Closing costs.
blanking on it. Closing cost. Yes.
Yep.
I
Hmm.
still have to, but I can pay it off over amount of time.
Yep.
Well, even putting that in bigger pockets, which for those of you who don't know
Yep.
is essentially just a system so that you can see how much it's going to make you over the course
Yep.
of time, it's still a loss.
Interesting.
Like I lose money doing that, which is insane to me.
Interesting.
Hmm.
Hmm.
So you have to find the right house
Oh, for
where it
sure.
is.
Hmm.
I know when I was initially looking at it before I got this apartment, there was one that I couldn't close on fast enough because it
Okay.
was off market.
Yep.
So if I would have got that, it would have been a phenomenal deal. I believe it was a triplex.
Okay.
So it was triplexes aren't that common though either. But it was
No.
a triplex off market, so you wouldn't have as many fees,
Yep.
and it would have been a good deal. Anyways, where I was going with that. What are your opinions on off market deals? Like, do you often do them? How does that work? Like,
I do actually do a handful of them. There's some agents that don't like to do off market deals, um, just because it's hard for us to get paid, and nobody wants to work for free. Um, so it does take a little bit of finesse to get in front of those sellers, and navigate how you're going to get paid for your time. Um, But in this market, you have to find off market deals or you don't find people properties. I'm constantly scouring Facebook and Craigslist and, just talking to my people about who might have something for sale. The benefit of off market deals is there's no competition typically. So you can get your buyers there, get them the property, hopefully not be competing against other people, and maybe they can secure it for a better price. The hard part is most sellers who are doing an off market deal for some reason already don't like realtors or already don't want to use a realtor or already don't want to pay a realtor. So that's the challenge. So there are a lot of agents that steer away from that. I actually just listed a property this week that was a for sale by owner. It was a duplex. They were adamant they were not going to use a real estate agent. I had shown it to 3 different potential investors. It didn't work out for any of them. But I did stay in contact with those sellers. And long story short, they tried FSBO for 3 months. And they called me last week. Hey, we haven't had any luck. We need a realtor. Can you please list our house? And so, you've got those that turn into business as well. So it does pay to look at the off-market properties, whether for your buyer or as potential listings.
Yeah. And I'm sure with you being you just being you, I'm sure that's half the reason they agreed to go with it. Just because if they hate realtors that much and no, you don't come off as a realtor. You come off as just another person.
Yeah.
I'm sure that was great. I wanted to ask as well, investors, is that a really, really good connection for you? Like someone who does investments?
Oh, for sure. Except that I'm not always the right person. So investors are like A plus B equals C. I'm going to go on bigger pockets. I'm going to put it into my spreadsheet and figure out how this cash flows. That's not how my brain works. I do have a couple investors that I work with. We have interesting relationships because I'm more like, how does this property make you feel? And they're like, I don't care how this property makes me feel. It's going to cash flow, it has a 8 cap rate. And I'm like, oh, good for you. I don't know. Where there are some realtors that their book of business is investors. And if you can make those connections, that's gravy because those people are going to they're looking for a new property once a year, twice a year. And so, yeah, heck yes, those realtors, that makes their life a lot easier. I have investors. It's just a very different relationship. I do have a couple of investors that are not looking for rentals, but that do fix and flips. And I like those because I love the touchy-feely part at the end where it's like, oh, this turned out so great and good for you. And we made X amount. And that's really exciting. But again, even sometimes those are hard for me to connect with as much because in the beginning it's all about numbers, right? And that's just not how my brain works. I have a couple of agents that I work with that I'm like, you need to be working with that person because that's who they are. They're not getting excited and, looking at what color we're going to paint the wall. To them, the numbers make sense. And so that's not a huge foundation of my business.
Yeah, I'm a very data person.
Yes, you are.
I really don't care how it makes me feel if it works.
Yeah.
And that's one of the funniest things with websites too, because I tell people that and everyone always assumes websites are very touchy-feely. How does it make, how do you feel? And I'm like, dude, you're losing money on the website.
Yeah. Doesn't matter.
You should fix that.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, I think real estate has that really nice niche as well where you can do that because if you're looking for your forever home, I guess is a good way to phrase it. You care very much how it makes you feel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think the investors that I have know that I'm going to work really hard to find them something. I'm going to work really hard to negotiate through contracts and get them the best deal that we can. And I think that their analytical brain is capable of doing all the numbers anyway. And honestly, the investors that I have, my opinion doesn't matter. They already have a formula that works for them. But they use me for the other parts that they know I'm going to do a good job on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one thing that I know just from having real estate investors in the family is you have to look at very specific things in the house. So for example, the foundation is really, really important. I know you're like you said, you're a very touchy-feely kind of person with that real estate.
Yep.
How do you present that to someone who wants to buy a house?
How do I present that? So I think I've been fortunate. Obviously, when I was a baby realtor and had no house knowledge, I don't know that I was the best asset helping like a first time home buyer or an investor walk through a property and point out foundation or roof or things that I can visibly see are going to be a problem. I think now I'm a lot better at that. But I think when I do see issues in a property, there is a way to present that is factual and helpful without being alarming. One of the hardest parts of real estate is navigating a home inspection. Right now with our market, we don't do as many of those as we used to because everything's so competitive. But, I've worked through home inspections that have $80,000 worth of things that have to get fixed, and we get through it. And there is a way to, get your clients the information, get them the facts, and actually try to take the emotion out of that. Because at the end of the day, anything is fixable. It's just whether that risk has a reward. So I think when it comes to that piece, I think I come at that from a much more factual, let's get the information, based on this experience that I had. I think this can be remedied this way. And I think I actually try to take the emotion out of it that way.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. I know reason I brought that up is because my uncle, my girlfriend's uncle, hold up. So when I was looking into things, he invests in real estate, and his thing is like, fucking, if you don't like check out the foundation, and like he has that like accent, and I'm like, that's gonna stick in my mind. That
yeah. Yeah.
So
and
I
mean,
also,
I've seen if you need foundation now, actually, like some things can be scarier than foundation, but I mean, like you can be looking at $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 worth of work in your foundation. And if you don't know that going into it, like that's going to put you in a huge bind. So yeah, that is a critical thing to look at for sure.
Yeah, that'll hurt.
Heck yeah. Especially like for you, if it's your first property, right? You don't have the equity to pull from, or, you've already used all your capital to get into the property, or maybe you did a WIDA or something like that. So like you obviously didn't have this huge stockpile to fall back on. That cannot be great for sure.
Yeah. I also wanted to ask, because you moved from KPR Brokers and now you're a partner in the Legacy Group. So what kind of made you want to own your own, a brokerage, I believe is the proper term?
Sort of. So we are a satellite office under the ROG Haven brokerage. And so that can be a little bit hard to explain. My business partner, Liz, has her brokerage license. But our office, technically from like a legal standpoint, is not a brokerage. We're a satellite office of this other brokerage. What made us want to leave? So I really think this comes back down to my hair brain. So like when I first started out in the salon, I worked for a corporation where I got paid commission. It was a pretty heavy commission split. I think it was 50-50 back in the day. The trade-off to that is with that 50%, they provided me all of the products that I needed to service my clients. They helped me find clients. They did all of this behind the scenes stuff where I didn't have to manage that business. I just got to meet new clients, build rapport with them, and do my service, which was hair, right? And then at a certain point in that business, I didn't need all of that behind the scenes stuff anymore. I had this book of business. I learned some skills as to how to manage my own business. And then that's when I transitioned to having a chair in a salon where I did all that myself, right? So instead of giving somebody 50% of my money, I gave them rent money every month. I paid for my own products. And then I kept a heck of a lot more money in my pocket because I didn't need that behind the scenes stuff anymore. And so when I think about my transition from KPR to doing my own thing, it's really similar. When I started at KPR, I worked for them under a team structure, and it's very similar. So they provide you, your office materials. They provide you an admin who does all of the stuff that you just don't know how to do yet. There was a lot of lead generation. So they did bring leads into my book of business that I maybe wouldn't have had otherwise. Obviously training. But the trade-off of that is they took a lot of my money. And that's okay. If I just wanted to sell real estate, and not have to deal with the behind the scenes stuff, that would have been a good place for me to stay. After I was there for a while, we did start our Legacy Group team at KPR, and the broker, because he's an independent broker, there was some flexibility. He could kind of adjust how things looked. And for, I think we did that 2 years actually as a team under KPR. And that was better. I think the services they were giving us were less than I think what we had to pay in was less, and that was better. But I think having owned my own business for 12 years, 13 years at that point, um, I think I'm a hard person to have a boss. I think I'm a hard person to feel like I can't do it on my own. And I don't know that doing it on my own is easier or better. Um, but that's just where I have to be. Um, so that was the motivation for the transition and really being able to kind of carve our own autonomy. I think myself and my business partner, I think we both have big personalities in some way. And when we were under the KPR brand, even though in our community it's a well liked brand, it certainly helped me build my business, right? They have a good reputation. I think it still felt hard to feel like I'm Amy Lesniak, the realtor, and not I work for KPR. So I think
Yeah.
that was part of the transition too.
I would say though, like starting out the way you did there is super beneficial as well,
Oh,
just
for sure.
because you can get the skills.
Hmm.
But yeah, that's definitely like a step that you need to take as you kind of like build your own, figure out what works for you.
Yeah.
Would you say it's also beneficial because you can allocate resources differently?
Oh, absolutely. Because maybe things that they felt were important to invest money in is different than I feel is important to invest money in, right? So, for sure, when you've got your bigger pot of money at the end of the day, you can choose what you think is going to benefit you the most. And some of those decisions are a miss. Sometimes you're like, oh, shoot, I just spent $5,000 on that. That was really stupid. There was no return on investment on that. But it was my decision to make and my decision to learn from. Where when you're just giving that pot of money to somebody else, it's following their business plan and what they think is important. So for sure.
I agree. I
Hmm.
know. I want to say like because you went off on kind of the independent thing.
Yeah.
Like that kind of seemed to be like what drove you. Would you say
Yeah.
that seems to be themes in other areas of your life, or would you say it's mostly just business aspects?
Oh, I think it definitely carries through in other parts of my life. I think one of the things about me that is a positive thing and also a negative thing is I'm not somebody that necessarily looks for approval from other people in my life. Like if I make a decision, I'm gonna just do it. And if it doesn't work out, that's on me. I don't need somebody's opinion to tell me that. Or if I think it was successful, that's on me. I don't need somebody's opinion on that. Like where my husband is a good example. He's very much like a pleaser. Sometimes his vision of what he wants gets left in the wayside because he's worried about, I hope my boss likes this, or I hope my friends appreciate this, or I hope this makes her happy. And I probably need a little more of that in my life than what I do. Um, but yeah, I think definitely independence for sure it was first and foremost where that comes from. And like I said, that can be a really good thing about me. And it also can be kind of sometimes something where I have to step back and be like, okay, don't make such rash decisions or don't jump off before you know how deep the water is or yeah, but that definitely is part of it.
Okay. I know the reason I brought that up is because there's so many people that just seem like they have two different personalities when you go business and personal.
Hmm. I will tell
And
you,
I
I
just,
do to some degree. I am naturally like the most introverted person in the entire world. Like real Amy. I don't need to talk to people. I could go 5 days and not have a conversation with somebody and be completely fine. You put me in a situation like networking where like I know everybody at networking, but every time I stand up, I feel like a bumbling idiot. Like I have an anxiety attack. Like I have huge social anxiety. You put me in front of a group of people that I don't know. Oh my God, let me crawl under the desk and not have anybody notice me at all. But I think people that know me as Amy the realtor or Amy the salon owner would not say that. They think that I'm outgoing and personable, and I can be, but those things are incredibly exhausting for me to do. So I think
I'm
in
the
that
same way.
respect, I do. You're the same way?
I'm the same way. Like
Yeah.
as soon as I'm done working for the day, like I don't, like usually like 6, 7 o'clock at night,
Hmm.
I want to go read a book or like
Yeah.
scroll TikTok for like five
Yes.
hours and just
Yes.
decompress.
Yes. Yeah. That is a huge source of conflict. Like, not to bring up my husband again, but like, he's Mr. Extroverted. He wants to talk to everybody. Again, he's people pleaser. And so what oftentimes happens is like, I'll get through my 12-hour day of being like over the top extroverted Amy. And then I get home and I'm like, oh, I'm done. Like, I just don't want to talk to anybody. And he gets home and he just wants to talk. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, you're just too much. And then he, of course, feels like, well, why doesn't she want to talk to me? And it's like, well, because I exhausted all of my effort doing that today to do my business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really, really funny because in some ways in business, you kind of have to portray a different you, but at the same time, you want to portray the same person just to be more like back to that authenticity. Like you want to be more authentic, but like, how do you do that if you need to talk to people for business?
Yeah.
Like, you don't have an option. You're kind of pigeonholed.
Yeah. Yeah. It is a conflict.
I also wanted to ask you about your like salon because you had, like you said before, you owned it for 12 years and then you were 8 years before that you were working under someone.
Yeah.
So how does that transition like to real estate? How do you take something like a salon where it's very people-y, you have the exact same customer all the time, constantly, to real estate, which is maybe people use you twice?
So the transition was interesting. I have always had a love of real estate. Like I was a chronic house shopper. I was like the person who was at every open house. I was like seriously wasting all of these realtors' time house shopping. Like I just loved real estate. I live a really interesting life. I'm actually a high school dropout. I came from a crazy family background. I started going to beauty school when I was 17, so I got into hair really early. I did that straight out of the gate, built a successful career doing that, but I always felt like I wanted to do something different. I just didn't know what that was. I wanted to do something bigger. I think I always had this like, Amy, you know, like you've lived this successful life, but on the inside, you're this high school dropout girl who nobody knows. I always felt like I had to impress myself and do something bigger, I guess. And so in my my early 30s, I decided to go back to college because everybody in my life, you know, had their master's degree, ran all these businesses, did all these things. And I think I felt like I had to do that, I think, for myself, actually, not to compare to them, but like for myself. And so I started going back to college. And at that time, my daughter was in a dance class with my business partner, Liz, her daughter. And Liz had just got her real estate license and she was loving it. And I was like, I'm so jealous. I've always wanted to do real estate. But it just doesn't work. You know, I've got the salon, I've got my babies, I'm doing college. And she kept saying, you know, like, you don't need to go to college. You're fine. Like, let's just do real estate together. And I'm like, no, I can't. Long story short, she eventually signed me up for the real estate class, told me it was paid for. And I was like, well, shit, now I need to get this class done because here she's made this investment in me. So I got the class done. I told her I was going to take the test, pass the test, and I was going to sell one house so that I could pay for my class. And then I sold 13 houses. And so the real estate thing, I mean, it sort of happened intentionally and something that it was something that I always wanted to do, but it sort of happened by accident. And then, you know, underneath all of that, I always knew that I wanted to get out of salon life eventually. I had the salon, I had the girls working for me, but the hours are super demanding, which sounds hypocritical because real estate hours are super demanding too. But instead of, you know, like I had 150, 200 bosses, right, that I had to please, which were my clients. If I was sick or something came up in my life, I had a lot of people to report to, and I wanted to get out of that. I wanted a little more flexibility and independence with my schedule. And so I think that's just how real estate happened. It was sort of accidentally intentional, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I think the success in real estate, from the sounds of it, is just kind of the accumulation of skills from everything that you've learned previously. Because especially owning something, like it's there are industry differences, but the general concepts are the same. And so you can transition significantly easier than someone just learning.
Yes.
So you mentioned you're a high school dropout?
I am. I know.
I
Surprise.
had
Don't
no
tell
idea.
anybody.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
I would have never guessed.
Yeah. Um,
How?
so I grew up in like super crazy dysfunction family. My dad was incredibly physically abusive. My parents got divorced when I was a teenager. Um, and when I say physically abusive, I mean like my parents would end up in the hospital abusive. We were incredibly poor. Um, my childhood, it just was not great. And I try to look at that and think of like what life do I want to provide for my kids that's different than that, right? Because like that is cyclical. Most people, that's they marry their dad and they raise their kids the same way they were raised, and you never get out of that cycle. And so, I think that has been a big lesson of what I don't want. Long story short, though, my parents got divorced. Just kind of this like rogue teenager who wasn't parented. I got incredibly into drinking and drugs. I overdosed a few times. I had some really not great things happen to me because of the way I was behaving. And I ended up dropping out my junior year of high school because I was just so behind. Um, which unfortunate though is like when I started my sophomore year, I had been a 4.0 student my whole life, but just the way life happened, that's what happened. Um, and then actually right around that same time, I met my now current husband. Obviously he wasn't my husband when I was 17, but, he came from like a cookie cutter American leave it to beaver family. He grew up on a dairy farm in Iola, like the most supportive, loving family in the entire world. I kind of met him through a different friend. And he just always used to be like, Amy, your behavior is not normal. Like you need to rein your shit in. Like this is crazy. Rein yourself in. And so I actually moved out of my house he's 2 years older than me. So when I was 17, moved out of my house. He was just my roommate at the time. And he was willing to, I said, really want to go to beauty school. I really want to do something with my life. And I just can't afford it. I don't know what to do. And so he let me be his like roomie while I went to beauty school. And long story short, we obviously ended up dating and getting married and whatever. But, yeah, I wish I could go back to my 17-year-old self and say, hey girl, it's all going to work out. Like, just get through it. It's going to be fine. So yeah, I don't tell a lot of people that. So now it's going to be on podcast land and everybody's going to know that I'm a high school dropout, but that's okay.
That's chaotic. I mean, listen, my high school was pretty crazy too. Like, I wouldn't say it's nearly as bad, but it was a little bit rough as well. Like, I had a falling out with my dad when I was 15, I want to say. I got kicked out, and then my mom was diagnosed with cancer a year earlier.
I think we talked about that, yeah.
Yeah, and then she passed away my senior year of high school.
Yeah.
So for all intensive purposes, I'm an orphan. Like,
yeah.
That's how that works. But I think like having those struggles is like a really big motivator for people in business.
Uh-huh.
Because have you heard of the idea of like productivity debt?
No.
Okay, so I'm going to kind of circle this back.
Okay.
Productivity debt is this idea that every morning you wake up and you're in debt. So you have to do X amount to just feel baseline.
Okay.
And so I think when like you have a really tough past like that, you get this need to fix every single little thing in your life because you didn't have it before. Yeah. And so you're constantly in this like again, this cyclical cycle of like, when do I hit the right, like, when am I good enough? When are things good enough?
Yes, I get that.
And so that I think is a really big driver. And I feel this every single day. I have to go to the gym if it's scheduled. I have to work out. I have to do cardio. I have to do something. Yeah. And then I can get on with my day. Mm-hmm. And then I have to work until I can't work anymore. And then I can go to bed. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And every morning I wake up this way.
I totally get that. I never knew there was a name for it. I've spent the last 3 years going like, when is enough? Like, when do I get to that spot where I'm like, you're selling X amount, or you're making X amount, or you're whatever that feels enough. And so I don't know when that is, I guess.
One of the worst parts is you eventually enjoy it too.
Kind of.
you get this like masochistic, like,
Yes.
I need to work
Yes.
kind of
Totally.
mentality. And
Yes.
like, I don't understand it. It's just
Hmm.
kind of how it is.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. Yeah. I usually at the beginning of every year, like I don't make New Year's resolutions, but at the beginning of every year, I try to have like, if I reflect back on last year, like what's something that I can, uh, what do I want like my undercurrent theme to be? Like, what's the thing that I need to work through this year and hopefully by the end of the year have a better perspective on it. And 2023, that's what it was like allowing myself to not feel like I needed to be a hero because I think for so long everybody be like, oh my God, how do you do it all? You've got your kids and the salon and the dogs and real estate and oh, you're amazing. And I must have had like this subconscious need for people to say that to me. And then I just fucking burned out. And then all of a sudden I was like, okay, I don't have to feel like that every day. Like I have to figure out how to have a better work-life balance. And so that was 2023. And I think I'm a little better. But I don't know, this productivity debt, that really resonates with me. So maybe that's where all that came from.
I think the also like wanting to have people approve or like
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of a people pleaser thing. Have you read it's a people pleaser thing and it's an ego thing. Because an
Mm-hmm.
ego thing is every time they're like, hey, nice job, like it builds you up, like you feel good.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
then people pleaser is just like you just want to make people happy.
Yeah.
Have you read Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday?
I have not.
Really good short read.
Okay, I'll find it. Ego is the enemy. Okay.
I think it's like 180 pages. It's a super small book and it's like 16-point font.
All
Like
right.
it's a quick read.
I like it. I'll
Um,
find it.
it has that idea of like at a certain point you get so good at something that people build you up and build you up and build you up, but forget about your flaws.
Ah, uh-huh.
So like if you were like a top 1% realtor, yes, you're a top 1% realtor, but what else in your life are you doing bad at? And
Yeah.
then you have this ego about everything in your life when
Yeah.
you really A shouldn't,
Yes.
and B just is ego really a good idea?
Yes.
Like that's
Yeah.
another thing that it talks
Yeah.
about.
I used to tell people all the time, like people would say that to me and I'd be like, that's fine, except that like I'm a B student on everything. Like I'm not running my salon the best I could be because I'm incredibly distracted. I'm not doing the behind the scenes work of my business as well because I'm incredibly distracted. I'm not as good of a mom as I could be because I'm in 10 places at one time. So don't give me so much credit because I could be doing a lot better. Um, so I get that for sure.
I would say a lot of business owners have like an ADHD, ADD tendency as well.
Totally.
Like I wouldn't say like it's as bad as like being diagnosed, but it's definitely like tendencies similar. Like you
Yes.
can't sit still and do one thing because
No.
then everything else in the business doesn't work. So you have
Yes.
to run around like a chicken with your head cut
Yeah.
off.
I do think there's this like threshold of stress that I must need to function well. And every now and then I get a little beyond the stress, where I'm like, oh
Yeah.
crap, now I've got too many things. But I always say that I'm like high functioning ADD. And I can tell when I have too much on my plate because all of a sudden the high functioning goes away. I'm just ADD,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel
Mm-hmm.
that. Hey, shortcut from the podcast. Just want to let you know if you're having struggles converting at all on your website with email marketing, with trying to get your website to rank, I'm a digital marketer. I can help you with those. That's part of the reason we do this podcast, just to get you more education and to get you some help. So if you're at all interested in that, link will be in the description to get a one-on-one consultation with me. So I will personally sit down with you for 30 minutes to see how we can help you out and see what we can do, get you more leads, get you more money. So with that, back to the podcast, and don't forget to schedule your one-on-one. Perfect. So I also wanted to ask you about your brain tumor, because that
Yeah.
was how many years ago?
That was 8 years ago.
Okay. Like, walk me through that, because I know a little bit about it, but I don't know a whole lot.
Yeah, so I am not the world's healthiest person. I have a couple of weird autoimmune disorders. And so I think I live in this threshold of just not feeling well all the time. Um, but when I first started not feeling well, I think I was like 21 or 22. So that would have been 20 years ago. And I think medicine has changed a lot in 20 years, but I spent probably, I don't know, a solid 5 or 6 years going to a slew of doctors trying to pin down what the heck was wrong with me. And sometimes doctors would be like, oh, it's anxiety. Oh, it's in your head. Oh, you have fibromyalgia, which isn't real. It was a very hard process to go through. So, um, the foundation of that is saying that like sometimes I'm very proactive about my health and sometimes I'm not, because that can be really exhausting to walk through when you know something's wrong with you and you can't figure out what it is. So, um, at that point in my life, I was dealing with like super bad headaches. I had lots of weird like numbness and tingling. I just didn't feel good all the time. It's also when I was going back to college. I had just started my real estate classes and I had little kids. They were 8 and 5. And no, 8 and 4, actually. Um, and so I was having just all of these just super weird symptoms. I went and saw a different neurologist. And she basically said, like, I think you're just anxious. I don't really think there's anything wrong with you. I think that you have a lot on your plate and you're just stressed and anxious. I think you're fine. And I remember walking out of that appointment and thinking, like, I am not crazy. There's something wrong with me. I cannot be making all of this up. And I walked out of that clinic and called a different neurologist in the car and said, I need to be seen. I don't know what's wrong with me. I've been through all these things. Somebody please help me figure out what's up. And when I went to her, she, after talking with me, she really thought that I had MS, which was like a really was scary. And one of the ways to confirm that is to do a brain MRI. And so I went and had that done, and she called me right away that day. And I thought, oh God, doctors don't call you the same day. They don't call you for weeks. So something must be up. And so she's like, you have this tumor in your head. We're not exactly sure what's going on, but you need to see this specialist and that specialist. And it probably took, I don't know, I bet it was a month from start to finish to get to the right person, because the tumor was kind of living in this spot where it was pressing against my brain and it was pressing against my optic nerve. And it had broken. There's this tiny little cavity between your orbital cavity where your eye is and your brain cavity, and it had grown through there. And so it was really hard to find a surgeon who could do it for me, because a typical brain surgeon doesn't work in the area next to your eye, and a typical eye surgeon won't work in an area next to your brain. So it took a long time to get to the right person, but I ended up down at UW-Madison, had a great doctor. And I went in for surgery. And honestly, like, it's so cliche and it sounds so cheesy and people say this crap all the time, but like, it truly was life-changing, honestly, because I opened my second salon from my recliner at home recovering, because you just get this kind of space of thinking like, I can do anything. Like, this isn't going to kill me. If I open this business and it fails, like, yeah, it's going to not be great, but I'm not going to die. And so I think it really, at least for me, it really does change your perspective. It changes how you look at your life. It makes you realize that life is short. And it also gives you this feeling of kind of like, at least for me, once I got through the stress of it all, of like almost being like infallible. Like, I don't know, like nothing is that scary. Nothing is as scary as that was.
Death is the ultimate motivator. Like,
It is. It is.
I mean, there's no other way to put it.
No. Yeah. Nothing is that scary. And like, my surgery was so wild. So when I first met with my surgeon, they were really hopeful that they were going to be able to basically go in through my eye, go in through this space, whatever this space is between your eye and your brain cavity, and get the tumor out that way. And he said, there is a chance that we're not going to be able to do that. And we're going to have to do what's called an osteotomy. So basically they take part of your skull out and then they access everything and then put you back together. And um, they weren't even sure what was going to happen until the morning of my surgery. He's like, until we start the surgery, we just aren't going to know. Um, but if we end up doing the osteotomy, if we have to remove your skull, like you're going to have to stay in the hospital. Otherwise, it's outpatient. And I thought, holy shit, like that's crazy. Like it's okay, okay. Um, and so I got out of the surgery. They're like packaging me up to send me home. Things are going pretty well. And I find out they did the osteotomy. Like they cut through my face, peeled off my face, cut out a part of my skull, took the tumor out, put me back together. And, 2 hours later, I'm going home. Um, and I remember being like, I'm not ready to go home. Like, you said if you took my skull off, I was going to stay. Like, you can't send me home. And so they got my surgeon and he's like, you're doing so good. Like, there's no reason to stay here. Like, go home. And so I just think that's insane. Like, I think that's just so wild. Like, they put me in a car. I drove home from Madison. I laid in my recliner after they had just like taken my skull off, It's so wild.
Were you sedated or no?
Yeah, I was totally put under for the surgery.
Okay. I was going to say, like, that would be cruel if
Somebody called me
they
again.
didn't.
No, I was
that'd
definitely awake. Or,
Asleep.
and my ride home, I don't remember. The whole first 2 days of being home, I hardly remember. The tumor had grown. So before my surgery, I had started to lose the vision in my eye. It was just pressing on things. And so I didn't know if I was gonna be able to see out of my eye after the surgery. They weren't sure if it had done like long-term damage or, and then because of the process of the surgery, because of having to, kind of remove that part of my face and skull, that whole eye was swollen for, I don't know, 10 days, 12 days. And so I didn't know if I could see. And I remember the day that I was like, oh my God, I can see out of my eye. Like it was just the coolest thing. So, again, super cheesy, super cliche, but super true. Super true. It's like, it is life changing.
I agree.
Mm-hmm.
Like half the reason I'm even doing what I'm doing at such a young age is because I watched like people in my immediate family die. And you just go, oh my God, that's going to be me in like 40, 50 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it's just insane.
Yeah.
So it's really, really motivating to I don't want to say it this way, but like, I feel like everyone should, or I will at some point see that and just go, let's do this.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of when, right?
Yeah. Well, and hopefully it's in your 20s like you and not in your 70s after your spouse dies or something. You know what I mean? So I agree. I think everybody does go through it. It's just when in your life does it hit you?
Yeah. And after that, like, you kind of see the world like completely different. And like, in addition to like the motivation part, you also see it in the fact of like, I get it, but like, take a deep breath.
Yeah.
Like,
yes.
You're cool.
Yes. There was a day, I think it was the day after I had gotten the diagnosis. I had to go, I don't know, I think I was at the grocery store or something, right? And so like, I had just had like the worst 48 hours of my life thinking, oh my God, I'm going to die. I have this huge thing in my head. I don't know what I'm going to do. And I was walking through the store and, I don't know, I almost felt like surreal. Like I was like watching myself in the store. But you're like, people are being rude to you, or people are being nice to you, or people are cutting you off, or people are helping you reach something. Like it really makes you realize just like, you really have no idea what people are going through. Like you have no idea what their day was like. And so like, just don't be an asshole, like, I don't know. I guess I try to live in that place even still, even though it's been years. Like you just really have no idea what people have on their plate. Again, cliche, but so true.
It's insane to me, just the realizations you get from that. Because like even some of my friends my age, they're going through life, they're happy go lucky, they're figuring it out, and like the littlest thing hits them, and you're like, dude, like take a deep breath.
Yep, you're gonna be fine.
I know he's being a douchebag to you, but like there's probably a reason for it. You're gonna be okay.
Yeah. We're going through that now. So my son is almost 17, right? And he just he's dating this girl for a couple, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 months, whatever, and they broke up. And he was gonna kill me for sharing this, but like, right, like first teenage heartbreak, he's devastated, and it's so easy in my place in life to look at him and be like, it's gonna be okay, you're gonna be fine. You were never gonna marry this girl, even though you think you were going to. There's plenty of fish in the sea. You're gonna be fine. Um, where he just doesn't have that life experience and perspective yet. Like he's just heartbroken and sad. So yeah, you're right. Perspective is a big part of it.
One of the weird things though with relationships too is if you break up so early, you still have kind of that like that limerence phase, I think is
Oh,
what they call it, where it's
yeah,
like you're really, really like I don't want to say infatuated, but like
yeah. All
you know
those
what I mean?
chemicals. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Whereas if like it's 3 or 4 years down the road, I feel like you've been working it out, you figured it out, and
yeah,
you're like, it's just not gonna work.
yeah. This just
So
isn't.
that also
Yeah,
hurts.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
My husband and I are gonna be married for 20 years this year. Man, marriage is a trip. It's hard. I know, right?
Is it way different than dating? Like,
It
or
is.
is it kind of the
It is different because, right, you don't have those infatuated chemicals anymore. You're not newlywed, and you're walking through all these stages of your life that, at least for me, like if I look at who I was when I was 21, which is super young to have gotten married, but when I was 21 to now at 42, I am not the same person. My husband's not the same person. Um, and so it really, not to like take the romanticism out of it, but like it really does become kind of like this choice. Like, who do I want to walk through this life with? Um, it's hard. You're raising kids together, you're budgeting together, you're living together. Living with people is hard, right? Like you've had roommates,
Mhm.
not that you're in a relationship with, but like living with people is hard. Um, Having like a romantic relationship with somebody, it really just does become a choice. It's super weird, but good.
Yeah. I would say like one thing that from what I've gathered, it seems to be like you get into a relationship because like you're infatuated with this person, the chemicals, whatever. But then
Yeah.
you stay in the relationship because you complement each other and
Yeah.
you work with each other. And it's
Yeah.
also that thing of like, it's super satisfying to know that there's someone that knows you to the most extent possible
Yeah.
and you can talk everything out with them.
Yes, that's very true. My husband and I, we've had like some interesting dynamics, right? So like I said in the beginning when I met him, I was kind of this mess. I was this like this crazy wild card, and he was not. He was Mr. Stability. He had this like super great job and all this responsibility, and he was really grounded, and he kind of kept me tethered loosely to the earth. I remember when we first got married, I was bartending. I thought my shit didn't stink. I was this little hot 20-year-old girl running around and coming home at whatever time of night. And he was very patient and very tolerant of my crazy behavior. And we spent a lot of the first part of our years, like he was building his career and he was having success. And I, was this like baby hairdresser who hardly made any money and bartended. And, then we had our kids, and again, I had the salon, but I wouldn't say that I was the breadwinner by any means. He certainly was. And like now we've switched. He left his job that had a lot of job hour requirements and stress requirements, and now he works like a Monday through Friday job. He took a pay cut to do that, but like now he's Mr. Mom. He does all the sporting events. He does all the things with the kids, and now my career is the one that's in focus. And so those things are hard to get through. It's hard, I think, for him to not be the breadwinner, not be Mr. Career, and then have me. I don't know. It's just interesting. It's interesting to walk through together.
Yeah. Again, it's also really nice to just have that person because, like you said, like you've seen him through all of those stages,
Mm-hmm.
and he's seen you through all of those stages. So it's
Mm-hmm.
nice to just be like, you know me. I don't have to like explain everything.
Yeah.
You're not a new person. Like,
Yeah.
it's a breath of fresh air.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good perspective. I should feel more like that every day and not irritated, Andrew. Thank you for that. It's a breath of fresh air.
I always laugh. My girlfriend struggles with one thing, like with me working constantly, because she's like,
Mm-hmm.
I want your attention.
Yeah.
But I'm also like, what am I supposed to do? Just give up
Mm-hmm.
on essentially like my dream job, essentially?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry, that comes first. And it's so nice as well because she's very, She's more pragmatic than I'd say the average.
Okay.
So I can like sit down with her and be like, listen, like this is how it's going to be. Like, I can't do that. And she goes, no, I totally understand, but like, can you do this for me so
Ah.
that we're,
Hmm.
so it works really well. And it's amazing.
Yeah, that's good. That's super good.
On that, we're hitting time here.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. What else? What do
for
you got left?
people,
Anything?
that's what I got. That's what I got.
Okay.
So for people, where can they find you? Where
Can
do you
you
want to
find
send
me?
them?
Oh gosh, this is where I'm supposed to know all my links and all the things, and I don't.
I'll put them in the description as well.
Okay.
So
I think the platforms that I use the most are Facebook and Instagram. We just talked about that. I need to be better at using my other social media platforms to find people, but that's definitely where I am the most easily found. Yeah, for sure.
perfect. I'll link those in the description so everyone looking there.
Okay.
It'll be below.